All right, so another fun video today. This one I'm going to be reacting to an article from what's called GiveMeSport. I've never really heard of this page before, but they had a fun topic here. I think it's going to be fun or I don't know, kind of terrible to thinking about, depending on which side of this trade you were on as a basketball fan. And so these are the 11 worst trades in NBA history, according to GiveMeSport and according to this writer. And to me, this is something I love to think about. I love thinking about hypotheticals. I love just imagining, where great players, could have been, where they could have played out their careers. Like, what if Scottie Pippen here stayed in Seattle? How would that have turned out? They actually had an interesting team in the late 1980s, and so seeing Scottie immerse himself in that squad, and would he have developed into the same type of player without Michael Jordan? I love thinking about these hypotheticals. To me, this imagination aspect of it and the what if aspect of it, that's part of what makes sports so fascinating, because just one little decision from a general manager can change the course of basketball history forever. And so looking at some of these trades, I'm interested to see how they rank them. I'm sure you're going to get the big ones on here. They got Bill Russell on here. Obviously, that trade was seismic, and so I'm sure that's going to be on the list. But I don't want to drag it on too long. I'm looking forward to see what they put on here. And let me know in the comment section what would be some of your suggestions for a list like this. And let me know if you agree with this ranking. I'll give my thoughts as well. So first off, number 11. This one's actually pretty low, and again, we live next to a train track, so there's trains going on outside, so I'm sorry about that if you guys hear that. I don't know if you guys can't hear that over the music, but it's going on, and so I'm sorry about that. But Clippers trade for Paul George from the Thunder. Now, this one's crazy because obviously it involved this guy, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who has been taking the NBA by storm over the last season. He led the NBA in scoring. He was an NBA champion, he was the league MVP, and he was the finals MVP. I believe the only other guys who have done that all in one season, I know Michael Jordan did it, I know Shaquille O'Neal did it, and I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it as well. And so, that's some pretty special, amazing company for SGA. And so, let's go ahead and look at the trade. The 2019 offseason saw two blockbuster moves by the Clippers. They were able to sign Kawhi Leonard, and I remember Clippers fans were talking mad trash at this time to us Lakers fans, and to be honest, I kind of felt like it was their time as well. I remember us Laker fans were really coveting both of these guys, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, but then they joined forces on the Clippers. And so they also pulled off a massive trade with the OKC Thunder, receiving Paul George for SGA, Danilo Gallinari, and get this, 7 first-round picks. Oh my gosh. While the trade shocked the NBA world and made the Clippers one of the best teams on paper, it failed to work out. That's just, oh my gosh, that's just crazy to me. I think 11's too low. And just to be clear, this article was written in May, so before the Thunder won the championship. I bet if this guy Chris redid this list, he would rank the Thunder even higher, seeing that OKC he'd rank this trade even higher, seeing that the Thunder just won the championship. And so because trading away SGA for Paul George, obviously that's just one of the worst trades in NBA history, because Paul George has only declined since then. And SGA has risen up to be one of the all-time greats. And so, but it's not just that. It's not just a 1-for-1. They also threw in 7 first-round picks, just devastating. And then they say here, 2 of those first-round picks became Jalen Williams, so SGA's co-star, and then Trey Mann. And so, to me, even before they won the championship, I would think 11 is too low, but considering the fact that they did just go on to win the championship, this could be top 3, top 4 by the time SGA's career is all said and done. Seriously, it could be. Rockets trade for Charles Barkley from the Suns. This one's kind of interesting because the Rockets ended up getting Charles Barkley, and Barkley didn't keep himself in as great shape, but he was still pretty effective. He could still score the basketball. He was still among the league leaders in rebounding. And I know when people look at that Hakeem Olajuwon, Charles Barkley, and Clyde Drexler team, they look at it as one of the great failed super teams of NBA history. And it almost feels like people look at them as if they were complete failures and were never even close. When in reality, they did go all the way to the 1997 Western Conference Finals. And if John Stockton doesn't make that shot that ends up sending the Jazz to the NBA Finals, it might be the Rockets squaring off with Michael Jordan and the Bulls in those finals instead. And I actually think that would be a more advantageous for the Western Conference team that's being represented, because Hakeem Olajuwon, the Bulls basically had no answer for him. Luke Longley couldn't handle him. Whoever the Bulls would try to throw at him at the time, they had no answer for Olajuwon. And you can see that in the stats whenever they met up. And so, you could say this was a bad trade. You could say this was a failed trade. But the reality is, because the Rockets did this, they nearly got to the NBA Finals again. And so it's just crazy how one shot from John Stockton, if it misses, then they go to a Game 7. Do the Rockets win? Maybe, maybe not. But I have a hard time ranking this one at 10. In the trade, the Rockets shipped their young core of Robert Horry, Sam Cassell, Chucky Brown, and Mark Bryant to the Suns for an aging Charles Barkley. And actually, this trade didn't work out all that well for the Suns as well, because Robert Horry had issues with Danny Ainge, who was the head coach of the Phoenix Suns, ended up throwing a towel in his face, which had Robert Horry end up getting traded to the Lakers, where he goes on to win several championships with them. So it's not like this trade worked out great for either team. But they got close because of this. So I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit too harsh. And to put it ahead of SGA's trade, yeah, I think that's too much. But number 9, Bucks trade Dirk Nowitzki to the Dallas Mavericks. Yeah, this was a terrible trade. It was on draft night 1998. The Milwaukee Bucks selected Dirk Nowitzki with a 9th overall pick. So obviously, the fact that he fell down to 9th tells us that people didn't realize how special Dirk was at the time. But when he entered the draft, he was the top international player. And what I do have to say is, my fellow old heads in the chat, you guys can back me up on this in the comment section. International players were not viewed in 1998 the way they're viewed today. Now, many of the best players in the league are international players. You've got Giannis, you've got Luka, you've got Nikola Jokic, you've got Victor Wembanyama. We can keep going and going. The league is just mostly dominated. Even SGA is Canadian. We've got guys who are from different countries all over the place dominating the league, to the point that if you put an All-American team versus an All-World team, I think the All-World team is probably going to win easily. Like, that's where we're at with the NBA now. So in 1998, there was still the kind of, there was the stigma about European players, that they were soft, that they didn't have what it took to be physical and win in the playoffs. This is just what they were saying at the time. And, so this kind of stuff worked against Nowitzki. Well, you all know what happened. He comes into the NBA, he kind of revolutionizes the power forward position, really, shows what a stretch big is capable of in this league. And but the Bucks were more interested in Robert Traylor. And this is the kind of unfortunate thing, because I remember liking Robert Tractor Traylor, as they called him. Big player. I'll put up some footage for you guys to see of him. But he was a skilled, big player who they had high hopes for. But he didn't end up living up to that. And it's now kind of unfortunate that Tractor Traylor is just now known as the guy who got traded for Dirk. But with that being said, the Bucks screwed that one up. That was a huge mistake, and it's kind of interesting to think about, what would his career have turned into if he played in Milwaukee instead? All right, so let's continue here. Number 8, Lakers trade for Russell Westbrook. Now, as a Lakers fan, this is going to sound weird, and I know I'm in the minority when I say this. I'm actually glad this trade happened, and the reason being is because Russell Westbrook, UCLA guy, I actually like Westbrook a lot. I like the motor he plays with. I like his intensity, his attitude that he approaches games with. I recognize his shortcomings. He makes a lot of bad decisions. He shoots too many perimeter shots for a guy who's not great at them. He's out of control at times. With that being said, I still like him. Did I think he was a good fit for the Lakers when he joined? No, absolutely not. I'm on record talking about how I thought a pairing of him and LeBron James was just moronic. So I didn't like it. It was just throwing stars together and seeing what stuck. And it didn't work for us. We gave up Kyle Kuzma, KCP went to the Wizards. And so it's not like we had to give up a ton for him. And for this reason, I think 8 is a little bit harsh. I do remember, when we had LeBron, AD, Rondo, Carmelo Anthony, Russell Westbrook, like the ultimate 2013 team, but in the 2020s, we were hyping this team up, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, they're gonna win 60 games. They're gonna be a championship contender." I never thought it was gonna work. It was like the retirement home for Los Angeles. So, yeah, didn't work out, but. Because I never thought it was going to work out, to me, 8 just seems a little harsh. It's not like they gave up much. I mean, I liked Kuzma. KCP was nice. I feel like with his shooting ability when he was on, because he's a bit streaky, he complemented LeBron James well. But yeah, that's not enough of a loss for me to say this should be an 8. All right, so number 7. Yeah, this one was horrible. This one was legendarily bad. And I know, Boston Celtics fans and Brooklyn Nets fans, you guys are going to remember this one a lot. So basically the context of this trade, the New Jersey Nets recently became the Brooklyn Nets at this point. And they got a new owner named Mikhail Prokhorov. And one thing about this guy, Prokhorov, he had ambition. And the instant he got in there, he was flexing his money muscles, and he wanted to build a championship contender as soon as possible. So I got to give him credit. He was bold, he was aggressive, but the one thing he didn't have was patience. You got to be patient if you want to build a championship team, and especially a dynasty team in this NBA. And so what does he do immediately? He trades for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce from the Boston Celtics, who were clearly aging. They get Jason Terry, and so he brings in 3 old players who are clearly on the decline. And then they just give away, let's see here. They traded Garnett, Pierce, and Jason Terry, who were all over 35 years old. Again, so putting all of your eggs in the basket of old superstars. To the Brooklyn Nets for 5 players and 4 first-round picks. The main pieces Boston received were Chris Humphries, Gerald Wallace, and a first-round pick in both 2016 and 2017. So they surrendered their future. Now, here's what's crazy. The 2016 first-rounder was used to draft Jaylen Brown, who was turned into a star for Boston. The 2017 pick became the first pick in the draft, which they traded to the 76ers in exchange for the 3rd pick. Philadelphia selected Markelle Fultz, but the Celtics came out as the winner, drafting Jason Tatum. So Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. That's what the Celtics ended up getting in return for this. Not only did they get rid of all of their aging stars right after they were done making their title runs or even their contending runs, but they turned it into their next championship team immediately. And so, yeah, this was a failed experiment by Brooklyn. It looked nice on paper. It looked nice on all the media day photos, because I remember they also had at one point Darren Williams and Joe Johnson on this team. So when you saw the starting 5 in the media day photos, it looked really nice, but it was old. It was impatient. It was way too bold, and it cost them. Not only did they not win with this team, they didn't really go that far with this team at all, but they basically just completely surrendered their future, and Boston became a perennial contender as a result. Number 6, 76ers trade Wilt Chamberlain to the Lakers. This one's tough because, we're talking about the worst trades in NBA history. And some of these trades are a result of the player wanting to move and the player wanting to change situations. And so a lot of the times when it came to Wilt Chamberlain, he got what he wanted. When he was tired of a situation, he would force his hand. Wilt Chamberlain was very good about getting what he wanted. I mean, you guys all know about the 20,000 number, but beyond that, Wilt Chamberlain played 48 minutes a game because he told his coach, I'm going to play 48 minutes a game. And who's going to stand up to the 7'1" Wilt Chamberlain, who's, got a massive ego and is a superstar of your team and say, no, you're going to play the way I want you to play. That takes some balls for that to happen. And so, Wilt Chamberlain found himself in situations where he wants, a change of scenery. I mean, you got to make it work, because if you don't, then you've got, a locker room situation, you've got drama on the team. And so this was a situation where I don't think Wilt wanted to be in Philly anymore. And so I really have a hard time blaming them for that as much. I understand it's like, it wasn't the best trade, especially considering what they got in return. I mean, I think they have the names here, but it was not anything that you would think would be worth of Wilt Chamberlain. I'm trying to see where they're at, but in the trade, the Sixers shipped Wilt off to LA in exchange for Jerry Chambers, Archie Clark, and Daryl Emhoff. Like, some of you guys are probably like, who are these guys? I know who these guys are, but they're not superstars. And so, yeah. Number 5, Bucks trade Kareem Abdul-Jabbar to the Lakers. Again, Kareem wanted to be traded. And so, although this was a terrible trade, Kareem was ready to move on, and he gave a short list. I think one of the interesting things to think about is one of the teams on the short list was also the New York Knicks. And so imagine Kareem going to the New York Knicks in the mid-1970s. That team might have won championships, several more championships in that era. But he ends up going to the Lakers instead. He kind of struggles, wins an MVP award, I believe, in 1976 while missing the playoffs. And eventually Magic comes and they become the Showtime Lakers dynasty. But again, I just have a hard time ranking a team this high, especially over something like the Nets one. The Nets one was bad, or this trade especially. Like, this trade should be much higher. It resulted in a championship, now an MVP winner. This guy's going to be one of the faces of the league for a long time moving forward. And again, 7 first-round picks for this one. And then with Kareem, he wanted out. He was ready to move on. The Bucks were never the right fit for him. Kareem wanted to live in the city. It just fit more of his personality and the lifestyle he wanted. Then he went on to go do movies in Hollywood and everything. So it just worked for him. So again, penalizing teams is one of the worst trades in NBA history when you had to make that trade. I don't know if it's going to be on the list, but I think of like Luka Doncic getting traded away from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers. The Mavericks didn't have to do that trade because Luka was very happy in Dallas. He would have signed a contract extension. He would have loved to have been there for most of his career, if not all of his career. But he didn't want to be here. So to me, yeah, I think that's too harsh to call it a top 5 worst trade ever. Supersonics trade Scottie Pippen to the Chicago Bulls at number 4. It resulted in 6 NBA championships for the Bulls. But, Pippen wasn't forcing the trade. So I guess there's that. That's one reason you'd rank it ahead of Wilt and Kareem. But Pippen was traded for Olden Polynice and 2 picks. And so I think this would have been a really interesting scenario. Obviously, I'm glad it worked out this way because we got the Chicago Bulls dynasty out of it. And one of the things I've always been curious about is, would Scottie Pippen have been the same player if he stayed in Seattle, if this trade never happened? Because a lot of people say that Michael Jordan made Scottie Pippen, and a lot of Jordan fans love to say that. And I think that's, to say he completely made him, he definitely made him better. When Scottie Pippen came into the league, people didn't see him as hungry, as competitive, as driven. He wasn't the dog he was defensively coming right into the NBA. Jordan, through team practices and stuff, kind of really harnessed that, refined him, made him a little bit more of that dog that he became. But still, Pippen was still skilled. He had that crazy growth spurt. He was still great coast to coast. He could handle the basketball. He could be a point forward. I just wonder what he would have been in Seattle. Would have been interesting. Number 3. Wow. Okay, I'm surprised to see this one only at number 3 because this guy has more championships than any player in NBA history, Bill Russell. After selecting Bill Russell second overall in the 1956 draft, the then St. Louis Hawks, now the Atlanta Hawks, traded him to one of the biggest rivals, the Celtics. And that's the other thing that really stings, is it wasn't like, an out-of-conference team like, the Suns or the, something like that traded Bill Russell. No. It was the St. Louis Hawks, and the Hawks and Celtics were meeting up in the playoffs year after year after year. So then they trade, to their rival, Bill Russell, who goes on to win 8 championships with that team. That's devastating. I'm trying to think of what a comparison of that would be, like a modern day. But just imagine, losing out on a trade and then having it go to your rival team. It'd be like if my Lakers, sent the Celtics, a guy who then went on to win 11 championships. Like, man, that must have sucked back then. And I'm trying to remember who was traded. So the Hawks' return was not terrible. That's true. It was not, because Cliff's a Hall of Famer. And then Ed was a Hall of Famer as well. And so, but they're not Bill Russell. And so even though this is 3, I think this could be 2 or 1 for me. I think it's number 1 or number 2 in my opinion, even though you got 2 Hall of Famers in return. Like, because it didn't take any time at all for Bill to start showing up in the NBA Finals year after year and winning multiple MVPs time and time again. Number 2, Hornets trade Kobe Bryant to the Los Angeles Lakers. I think this is too high, not because of how great Kobe Bryant is. I think it's too high because of a few things. One, Kobe Bryant was selected 13th overall. And it was Jerry West in his brilliance that saw Kobe's potential and immediately tried to jump on it. But, I mean, if Kobe's 13th, that means that 12 other teams in the league passed up on Kobe. And at the time, he was seen as this high schooler. He was this big risk. Like, yeah, people saw his talent, but, this was the time where they had, like, what did they call it? It was like the Elite Six or something like that. Basically, you had Shareef Abdul-Rahim, Allen Iverson, Antoine Walker. You had all these hyped players heading into the 1996 NBA draft. So, Kobe was just not really the priority for many teams except for Jerry West and the Lakers. And the Hornets, when they drafted Kobe, the only reason they drafted Kobe was because Jerry West was trying to move up in the draft and they offered him a trade. And so they offered the Hornets Vlade Divac, who was a quality center at the time. Like, don't get it wrong. Like, Vlade Divac was solid. And so that was a big thing for the Lakers to give up what was their starting center. But again, they knew they were getting in Shaquille O'Neal, so it made sense for them to do that. But again, the reason why the Hornets, traded Kobe is simply because Jerry West wanted to move up in the draft. But if Jerry West never called the Hornets, they might not even take Kobe in the first place. They might not have any plans to keep him. So to call it one of the worst trades, it's like, well, it's almost like he was never theirs in the first place because they never really wanted him. It's just as bad for the Hornets to trade him as the other 12 teams in the league to pass up on him before that. You know what I'm saying? So there's some nuance to that. Obviously, the reality is they traded Kobe Bryant whether or not they wanted to keep him. But I don't think they were ever planning on seriously keeping him. And Kobe didn't want to be there either. Like, Kobe did not want to play in Charlotte. So he might have been there for like maybe a few years, his developmental years. And then the first opportunity of free agency, Kobe's out the door. So there's a lot of nuance to this one. And for that reason, I would have it maybe top 5, but not quite number 2. I would definitely have the Bill Russell trade above the Kobe one. That's for sure. And then number 1, the worst trade in NBA history. I gotta disagree with this one. Mavs trading Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis. It's definitely the most shocking that I've ever seen. I was obviously not alive the times where Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got traded, and obviously they didn't have Twitter back then, so they probably weren't keeping up with everything. So when, the biggest star in the league's traded, I'm sure it was incredibly shocking back then. But this one was nuts. Like in the middle of the night, it was like February 1st, There was no reason to expect this, especially after we got some iconic moments in the last playoff run with Luka, where he'd just taken his Mavericks to the NBA Finals. It made no sense. But although Nico Harrison looks like a dork and like he doesn't know what the heck he's doing, we haven't seen how this has panned out yet. Like, we literally haven't. We saw how the first year did, and it was brutal because Anthony Davis got hurt, Kyrie Irving got hurt, and then Luka went to the Lakers, but they got bounced in the first round as well. And so, as crazy as it sounds, the verdict is still out on this one. And if the Mavericks plan does end up working, if Nico's plan does end up working and defense is what wins championships, and now that they've got Cooper Flag, which is really a result of, this trade, how are you going to look at this 3 years from now if the Mavericks win a championship and say this was the worst trade in NBA history? At that point, it just simply wouldn't be. And so for me, it's way, way too early to say it's number one. If you wanted to call it the most shocking trade in NBA history, yeah, I'd be down with that. But yeah, too early for this. I feel like it's too harsh at the moment, even though I don't have Nico in very high regards. And, it just seemed almost too hard to believe. Like, some people still suspect that the whole thing was rigged. I don't know about that, but I know at the very least it was ridiculous and shocking. But yeah, way too early to say it's number one. I feel like there's some big trades that I expected to be on this list that are not. If you want to talk about the worst trades in NBA history, I know some people are probably going to say Pau Gasol getting traded from the Grizzlies to the Lakers. Now, you got to remember, although that was bad because it was basically Kwame Brown for Pau Gasol, and the Lakers go on to win championships, Memphis Grizzlies were looking to rebuild. They were looking to free up some cap space. And then that trade did involve the draft rights to Marc Gasol, who ended up becoming a star and one of the greatest players in Grizzlies history. So, I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below what other trades you think should get on this list, because I definitely think there's some ones that, could be here, but are not. Bill Russell, to me, I think this is probably number one. It's just so long ago and way before many of us were even alive. So I feel like, it just doesn't land the way it should with many of us. But to me, this has got to be one or two at the lowest. And then this one could end up being, this one could end up being top three by the time SGA's career is all said and done. Like 11 is way too low because, again, you trade this guy for this guy, which is obviously bad, and then 7 first-round picks. My goodness. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. I thought this was fun just to think about the hypothetical scenarios, what could have been, and what ended up happening. But again, let me know in the comment section below what are some trades that you think should have gone on this list. As far as content on this channel, I'm going to get to more regular scripted content. Me and my family are actually going through a big move right now, which is why I've been doing more of this like chill off the cuff content so much, is because it's really just hard to find time to do the editing, to do the script writing, to clean the audio, all the stuff I got to do, and to keep up with my regular schedule. So I've been mixing this in a little bit to help myself out, but be expecting more of that usual narrative-based scripted content. So thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.